Oh, hello. I'm Ryan Sloan with the Gear Cage, and welcome to episode 3 of the Building Your Home Studio series. Today, we're talking about the technical nerve center of your operation, and that would be your computer. We're going to take a look at some of the Apple and PC options available today and talk about things you'll want in your computer build and some things to maybe avoid to save some money. As always, if you have any questions, you better send me a message at hello@thegearcage.com. Let's get started.
All right! Woo! Yes!
All right, we're going to look at the computers that are out there and available. And we're actually going to start with Apple computers because, to be honest, I think they're the best bet for recording. They're easier to use. They have Thunderbolt 3 now. It just creates a better user experience. And one of the big obstacles that people always talk about is that they're so much more expensive. And really, that's not the case anymore. I don't know that it really ever has been the case on decent machines, but let's just jump into it. The Mac Mini is actually a very capable system. In fact, this screen capture, my Pro Tool sessions, all kinds of stuff are actually running on a Mac Mini right now, not even one that I would call souped up. So they're very capable machines, and they're only going to get more and more powerful as time goes on, and the price is amazing. So the big benefit with these M1 machines is that everything is on the same chip. You've got your CPU, your GPU, your neural engine, you've got your RAM, basically all on the same chip. They call it a system on a chip. So you can see, this will come into view here, all these various components are on the singular chip here, which just gives you really fantastic performance. We can liken it to, on a traditional computer, you have your RAM, which could be Cincinnati, you have your processor, which could be Cleveland, you've got your RAM, which could be Indianapolis here. So, you have to drive from place to place to send data back and forth. But the M1 chip is such that it's all like having everything in one town. So you can go back and forth across the same town much quicker. So you don't necessarily have to have as much processing power or things of that nature to get it to work. So that gives you big benefits in terms of power consumption. It just gives you lots of efficiencies all across the board, really. Now, one thing with this, and let's just dive into the configuration section here. You'll notice that they don't have the specs of a lot of modern computers in terms of RAM, for instance. I'm sure they'll add more in the future, but that's something you want to keep an eye out on. This is all actually being run right now, this whole screen capture and everything, on an M1 with 8 gigs of RAM. My Pro Tool sessions work, my Universal Audio sessions work, even YouTube videos work just fine. But I do find that I could use a little bit more RAM. The 16 gig version just wasn't available when I bought this particular computer. So I always choose the one on the right here. You don't want the highest end, but you don't want the lowest end. You want to be able to configure it here. So as we're looking here, we can see that this has 16 gigs of RAM. You're definitely going to want that if you go the M1 route. That should take really good care of you. And then the 1 terabyte hard drive, I think, is a happy medium. If you're doing a lot of video work, or if you don't want to use an external hard drive, I recommend getting the 2 terabyte drive. The problem is that the price just jumps up so dramatically to do that the 1 terabyte drive is really the sweet spot for getting a lot of performance and everything out of the computer. Now, we can see that we don't have a lot of options here. That's the funny thing. These machines are such that you really only have a couple of options to configure. Now, the RAM cannot be upgraded after you buy the machine because it is on the chip. The hard drive is actually the same way. So you really do need to choose as much as you can, as much as you can afford or that makes sense up front because you're kind of stuck with it. But this is a pretty good system that's very, very capable. And guess what? We're at $12.99 here. So yes, please. There you go. $12.99. That is a completely current, capable, powerful recording system, both for audio and for video applications. So win-win. Now, let's say you want something a little bit more. Let's say you don't want to have to buy a separate monitor. That's cool. We've got a solution for you too. Apple has their iMac that you can do. It's very convenient. Right now, the only problem is that they only have the Intel Mac in the 27-inch. I do suspect they'll have an M1 version soon. But let's just click on that, and I'll take you through a typical Intel build as well, because there's actually a little bit more to it. The way Intel processors work, to get a really good recording system, you want to try to get an i7 processor. They have an i7 and an i9, maybe even an i10 now. I'm not 100% sure about that, but those are their more cutting edge processors. It's not that the i5 won't work well, but I've just noticed some bottlenecks in those in the past, and I've really never had problems with i7s over the years. They just always crank and really do a great job. So let's configure this one. This is a little bit more on the powerful side, but in fact, let's start here in the middle. I bet we can actually upgrade this to an i7 without going too crazy. Now, Apple's going to have some of these things like this nano texture glass, which is really cool and everything, but that's just going to help with the look. It's going to help with the glare in your eyes. That's not really going to help give you any more performance. So if we need to be, counting pennies here and everything, let's not go for that. Now, interestingly enough, on this particular model, they don't have an i7 version. They go from their i5 6-core computer to their i9 10-core computer. So the performance boost in doing this is pretty gargantuan. This is a ridiculous jump in performance, but notice it's also a big jump in price. And guess what? That puts us now at the $24.99 mark before we upgrade our RAM and our hard drive that we're going to need to do. So guess what? We're not going to go with this one. We're actually going to go back, and we're going to go back over here and start here, because this is actually going to give us a sweet spot where we don't need the latest processor. An i7 is going to be totally sufficient, especially 10th generation, for what we're going to do here. So I'm glad that mistake actually happened, because it helps you kind of play around with the settings on the Apple Store so you can get the most performance, best bang for the buck. See, and notice here, it's actually a $400 upgrade to go to the i9 on this build. Kind of fascinating. So we're going to skip that here because it's just not worth our money, worth our time. And now we're going to go to memory. And on a traditional machine, this is going to make an impact. 16 is a bare minimum in 2021, 2022. So you're really going to want to hit 32 gigs of RAM, and that should last the life of the machine. If you're doing a lot of video work, if you're doing a lot of 3D rendering, really detailed Photoshop things, you may want to go with 64 gigs of RAM. But again, the reality is that spending $400 here is probably not the best option for you. So I would skip it. 32 gigs is the happy medium. Now, graphics cards. To be completely honest, the 5500 XT is a pretty solid video card. So again, unless you're doing lots of video work, lots of rendering, lots of gaming, you probably don't need to upgrade this. So let's leave that as is and get to one of the more important parts here for us, which is going to be storage. Whether you're doing audio or video, you need to make sure you have enough storage to get the job done. If you're doing video, you're probably going to want 2 terabytes here. If you're doing just audio, 1 terabyte could probably take care of you, as long as you have an external drive. If you're going to get software like Complete from Native Instruments or Omnisphere from Spectrasonics and things like that. So I think that 1 terabyte is definitely the sweet spot. So you can see we've got that. I don't think we need to upgrade our Ethernet connection. A gigabit speed is going to be completely sufficient, even if we're going to do Dante at some point or some network-based recording protocol. That's more than sufficient. This comes with the Magic Mouse, also good. So yeah, this would be a good build. In fact, this would be a really powerful machine. Now notice it's at $3,099. I would consider that to be a more expensive build. But again, keep in mind you are getting a 27-inch Retina 5K display with that. So you're getting this, if you were to get this on its own, probably about a $700 display with the computer. So that puts you more in the 2300-ish range, which is pretty kind of appropriate for a more powerful computer. And this machine actually is very powerful. Now, if we want to be more budget conscious with an iMac, we can get one of these 24-inch M1 chip iMacs, and we can save a ton of money. You can see here on the right side here, these are topping off at $16.99. Pretty good deal. You got your fun color choices. Why not go pink on this thing? Let's take a look at this and see where this ends up. I'm guessing it's going to be around $2,200 for this guy. We're going to go to the 16 gigs of memory, just like on the Mac Mini, and we're going to go with the 1 terabyte of storage, and then boom, we're at $20.99. So actually right now, if you can get away with not having a 27-inch screen, this is probably the sweet spot performance-wise without spending a lot of cash. And it's pink. I mean, come on, you can't put a price on that. Actually, you can. It's $20.99. Way to go, Apple. All right, so let's say price is no object. Reckless abandon's what we want. We're doing a Pro Tools HD system. We're doing a UAD system where we've got the PCI cards we want to put into the computer, or some card-based system. Then we're going to go with the Mac Pro. And yes, this is where it's going to get a little bit pricey. These things are extremely expensive, but they're cutting-edge workstations. Now, my big kind of star warning here is, like I just said, the M1 is going to be their platform going forward. So do you really want to drop $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on one of these today, which is what we're in September of 2021? Probably not. So I would advise not getting a Mac Pro unless you really, really want one. If you build these right, these can last you for a decade, which is great. But if Apple changes the whole architecture and the whole game, you could be wasting a lot of money here. So it's something to really consider as you're looking at computers. And let's be honest, this rack mount should not be $500 more. Come on, Apple, that's a little absurd. I know they also charge like $1 billion for wheels. And this is a premium product, so they're fine to charge kind of all these crazy prices, but just a little bit insane. If you're going to go on one of these, see these price points, they just are kind of absurd. If you're going to do this, the 12 core or 16 is probably going to be your sweet spot here. The reality is all of these are going to run audio and video, no problem. If you're doing lots and lots of like rendering for 3D graphics and things, that's really who this is for, and you're going to buy these beefy machines because it's going to save you so much time in rendering that it makes it worth it for the price point. These come with 32 gigs of RAM by default. Again, if you're going this route, you might as well go big, but maybe not too big. I'd say 96 gigs of RAM is going to be so sufficient. This is a beast of a computer already. Now, video cards here. If you're going to get this machine, stack it up with something that's going to be pretty future-ish proof without spending thousands upon thousands of dollars. We don't need multiple video cards for anything that is audio related. That's video only. But I don't have a problem getting a really stacked Radeon Pro card here with 16 gigs of RAM. Because if we're going to drop this much money on a computer, we want it to last for a long time. And this is going to buy us that 10 to 15 year workflow by really stacking it. Same with storage. It really kills me to spend, effectively 16 to 1800 on storage, but I'm going to put 4 terabytes in this thing if I'm going to do it right. We don't need the afterburner. We're definitely not spending $400 for wheels on this thing. Comes with the Magic Mouse. Thanks, Apple. You're so gentle and kind. This build comes in at basically $10,000. Is it necessary? No way. And you could do the baseline model and have a really good performing system. But $10,000 for a computer, that's a little bit crazy. So that takes us through the Apple line. The laptops are great as well. In fact, I've got a few of those that I use for various projects. If you go with one of their 16-inch MacBook Pros, you can do anything. You can do tons of Photoshop stuff, tons of Pro Tools stuff. anything you can basically imagine, not a big deal. Price points, they're going to be around 2,500 to 2,800 for a really solid machine. Let's go down here and start here. You can see this one is a 9th generation i7. I actually have an i9 laptop from them, and frankly, I wouldn't recommend it. It runs too warm. Performance-wise, I don't notice huge boosts. So I don't know what they did on those models, but frankly, they don't justify the dollar amount that they're at. So let's start here with our trusty i7, and let's move this up to 32 gigs of RAM. Again, the sweet spot on one of these guys. I struggle here, but yeah, I'd say I probably would move up to a Pro 5500. And on my laptop, I went with 2 terabytes of storage just to have plenty of headroom. But again, you can cut that back to 1. I mean, that's going to save you $400 and put it at $31.99. And again, worst case situation, you can totally run this with 16 gigs and get away with it. So if you do all that, you're at $2,800. But in my mind, if I'm spending $2,800 and I can just spend a few hundred more to take it to the next level, I'm probably going to do that. So I'm definitely going to go to 32 gigs of RAM, no doubt about it. And there's a good chance I'm going to go to 2 terabytes. It's $800 more, but it really gets the job done for you, and you won't find yourself hitting a wall 1 or 2 years later. So that is the Apple side of things. And again, I recommend Apple. The operating system's great. The hardware build quality is great. The engineering is great. I really can't say enough good things about Apple products. I'm an Apple fanboy. I have Apple everything. But let's say you want to save a little cash. You want to go with a Windows-based system. We can still do that on the PC side of things, like with a company like Dell. We can get some really solid machines without the Apple tax. In fact, look, for this desktop here, this XPS desktop, we're at $1,149 from Dell. That's an 11th generation, which is newer than what Apple has, i7. Comes with Windows 10, 16 gigs of RAM. Let's soup this one up and see where we end up. We're going to save a lot of money over the Apple stuff. And I actually don't even really, I know that Windows 10 Pro includes some advanced networking and some other features. It's $60. Let's do it. I'm not driving. And it's interesting to me that it doesn't seem like you can change things as easily here. I'd like to get in there and just change it. I don't know why their website doesn't allow me to do that. Maybe they're trying to not allow for a lot of customization. That's kind of interesting. Back in the day, Dell actually was kind of famous for kind of innovating this whole approach where you can kind of click and build your system. I wonder if I'm just missing it or if they really don't actually have the customization options anymore like they used to. But as we're looking here, I mean, everything on here is actually pretty solid. So you can literally use this computer to get the job done. I'm just surprised they wouldn't allow for any upgrades on this, but it would help them ship it much quicker. So I suppose that could be something that they're going for here. Let's see if we can actually tweak one of these and get it where we want it to be. All right, so we're checking these out now. I'm sorry, people. I'm just not seeing how to customize these here, which is really interesting because the button says customize and buy. There we go. This gives us some more options. So if we do this XPS desktop, this is already at $1949, which for a PC is more pricey than you would expect. But you can see they're loading this one in. This has an i9 processor which is a really beefy, powerful processor. That'll get the job done. Yeah, let's just get Windows 10 Pro. Why not? This actually has a really powerful video card. I don't see any really reason. I guess I might upgrade to an AMD just because I prefer those cards. So we'll do that. And we'll go to 64 gigs of RAM. We'll definitely do a 1 terabyte drive. And actually, the cool thing here is you can do dual drives with them. So you can put in 2 solid state drives into this machine. So that's pretty cool that you can do that. But then the price does start to get away from you a little bit. So maybe we should actually dial it back a little bit. And maybe I will even go back to this GeForce graphics card because it doesn't take that much of a graphics card to draw a waveform in Pro Tools. So there's no point in wasting the money at that point. And this is an interesting thing. So let's look here at the dual drive model that they have here. So that comes with a 512 gigabyte solid state drive, and then it comes with a 1 terabyte traditional mechanical drive, 7200 RPM spinning mechanical drive. So that's going to give you 1.5 terabytes of storage, but you can put all of your system components on the 512 gig drive and then put your session files and complete, for instance, on your other drive, the 1 terabyte section. So that's actually pretty handy. So if we do all of this, then we're at 2349 or 44. So that's pretty good. And apparently we can maybe save 17% off with a coupon. So that's kind of cool. So really that takes us back to a pretty sweet spot as far as price goes. But again, let's jump back because we can totally 100% get away with using that computer that we started with. So that was much less expensive and still was a solid performer. That was this one here, this XPS desktop for $1149. So don't think, even though a lot of these machines that I've been pricing out, like in the sweet spot, so we have zero limitations for years and years, they're adding up to this $2,000 to $3,000 price point. You don't have to do that these days. The reality is any of these machines on this page, well, maybe not this guy. We don't want an i3 processor. We don't want that. But any of these 3 computers will get the job done for us well. So you always want to make sure, if you can, that you get at least 16 gigs of RAM. In fact, Pro Tools, I think the minimum is 16 gigs of RAM. So this one's not going to really cover that. That's not to say that it won't run, because it will run. But if you start to get a larger session, you're probably going to have some problems with swap files and things like that going back and forth, which slows us down, slows load times up. So again, bare minimum 16 gigs of RAM. Hard drive, I would say bare minimum is 512 gigs. Solid state's really what you want on your main system drive these days. You don't want a mechanical drive. You don't want you especially don't want a 5400 RPM drive. I don't even know if they make those in computers anymore, but if you see one, do not get it. Do not get a 5400 RPM drive. That'll cause tons of problems. 7200 RPM is sufficient, but solid state is definitely where you want to be. So let's say you don't want to mess with all these configurations. I do like the Sweetwater creation stations because they've taken the guesswork out of it for you. They've given you powerful machines that get the job done that are spec'd to use with Pro Tools. So if you really don't want to go to the Mac side, you really like to use Windows, the creation station can't go wrong. Like, it's literally been tested and designed. The team at Sweetwater that does these actually does benchmarks with all the various softwares. They check for compatibility of motherboards, processors, hard drives. I think on the big one here, they even actually insulate it so it's quieter in your studio. So this CS250 certainly gets the job done in a small, I think 2U rack space. And unlike Apple, they don't sell it for $500 because it goes in a rack. There you can see the inside of the computer here. It's all really well laid out. Airflow is very good. They're using nice drives like this Barracuda from Seagate. It's all higher end components. It's not bargain basement components, which I think is important. You're getting a quality built machine. In a machine like this, you should really be able to get about 5 or 6 years out of it typically. Notice they are using an i5, so that's not amazing, but it does save some money there. But you do have these core 16 gigs of RAM and 500 gigabyte specs here. You also do have a 2 terabyte internal drive. So realistically, this is actually a better value than the Dell machine when all is said and done, in my opinion. You do also get the Sweetwater lifetime tech support for free, which is awesome. And you also get a 2-year warranty on it for free as well. So if we're comparing the Dell machines to the Creation Station, since they are purpose-built for audio, since you do have all that support, frankly, I would just go with the Creation Station. You're going to come out ahead, I think, overall by doing that. And if you want to get real crazy and again, build a machine that's going to last, it's going to give you upgradability, it's going to give you the ability to put some cards in it. The CS400 is the big mama jamma. That's running an i7 processor, 10th generation. It's still rack mountable, but hits that real sweet spot of the 32 gigs of RAM and the 1 terabyte solid state drive with the 2 terabyte mechanical drive. Awesome specs. This thing would be blazing and would handle anything that you could basically throw at it. So, yeah, that one's definitely worth checking out. A really great machine. I don't think there's really anything else to say. So, those are the basics of choosing a computer for your studio. I hope you learned at least 1 or 2 things on this one. Let's recap. If we're going to do an Intel processor in 2021, you want to do a bare minimum of an i5. The i7 is the sweet spot, but the i9, and I think there's an i10. If there's an i10, you don't necessarily need to do those. Those are going to be a little bit overkill for what you're going to need. RAM, 16 gigabytes will get the job done, but 32 gigabytes is the sweet spot, and that keeps moving up over time. So give it 4 or 5 years, and 32 is probably going to be the bare minimum going forward. So then you'll probably want to have 64. Other things to think about: hard drives. You're going to want solid state drives whenever you can on your main system, and you can have a secondary drive that's 7,200 RPM, like a mechanical drive. You can get a 1 or 2 terabyte drive like that, much less expensive. But if you can, maybe even get 2 SSD drives, solid state drives, and you'll be able to really power through the system. So those are the big components we're looking at. If you have any other questions, be sure to send me a message at hello@thegearcage.com. My name is Ryan Sloan. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again next week.